party that holds no cards has suddenly found one to play, the fear card. Democrats are now warning that President Trump is going to disappear you. Why? Because 47 floated the idea of deporting some of the most twisted, violent American criminals, think Hannibal Lecter on steroids, and shipping them off to a foreign prison.
We're getting rid of our criminals from out of the United States that were allowed to come in by Biden. We're getting them out. And the president is helping us with that, President Bukele.
Could we use it for violent criminals, our own violent criminals?
I call them homegrown criminals.
Yes.
I mean, the
homegrowns.
The ones that grew up and something went wrong and they hit people over the head with a baseball bat. We have, and push people into subways just before the train gets there, like you see happening sometimes. We are looking into it and we want to do it. I would love to do that.
And now the left's worried that Trump is about to disappear The View.
We are watching our neighbors, students, and friends being fired, targeted, and disappeared. It is real.
The Trump administration's claim legally is that they can take anyone in the United States and disappear them to a foreign country.
There is not included in Title 18 send someone out of the country, much less to a hellhole prison in another country.
What stops Donald Trump from wrongfully labeling any American as a non-citizen gang member and abducting them in the dead of night and rendering them to a foreign prison to be tortured?
He's going to do that to U.S. citizens. I think the hosts of The View are about to get administratively errored.
Dems in the media also playing the fear card over their so-called Maryland dad, championing the return of the alleged MS-13 gangbanger and designated foreign terrorist, Kilmar Armando Garcia, after Trump sent the Salvadorian migrant back home to El Salvador. Democrat Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen is actually going to fly to El Salvador to show his solidarity.
You've got a Maryland man who's the father of 3, illegally detained in a notorious prison in El Salvador. It is absolutely unjust and illegal to have this Marylander detained one more day in a notorious prison in El Salvador.
Was the senator crying?
I don't think so. I think his voice was breaking, but I'm not sure.
It's going through puberty.
Maybe. I mean, it happens for goes for a while. Obviously, the rule of law is important. I don't know whether the president was joking about homegrown. I think it might behoove them to maybe clarify. He said it more than once, but it kind of reminds me of the third term talk. So I'm not exactly sure. But I also know this, that for years we had no system to vet anybody that was just walking across the border into our country. Not only that, President Biden made up this thing, the CNHV, Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, Venezuela parole program, so that they didn't even have to make an effort to cross the border illegally. They could just fly in. And now we have to vet all of them to get them out. And it seems like this continual problem for the Biden administration that they're not exactly being held accountable for, because Biden's not really doing anything. Kamala's not doing interviews. Everybody else is like melting into the woodwork, and all the books are coming out saying that nobody really knew what they were doing anyway. So I think that is a problem. And I also believe that if the Democrats want to fly to the border, now they want to go, now they want to check. And so I'm for the rule of law, and I think this is actually a very interesting case. The White House had said, they said on Monday that for 72 hours, the press got it wrong, and that the Supreme Court's decision was actually in their favor 9-0, and complained then that the press got it wrong for 72 hours. But also well, then if they got it wrong, then 72 hours on that day, tell everybody. And then you could have a debate, and you could have some people saying they're right, they're wrong. Jonathan Turley on America's Newsroom today thought that the White House had a good point. So I don't know. I actually don't know where it goes from here. I'm curious to hear what the judge thinks, because at this point, going down to get him doesn't seem. I don't think Van Hollen is coming back with Maryland now.
Excuse me, El Presidente. Yeah. I'd like to see MS-13 in the mega prison.
Yeah. Well, Bukele has already said in answer to CNN, Caitlin Collins in the Oval Office yesterday, he says, number one, You know, I am not going to release him to the United States. I don't have the power to take him out of a prison and force him to come to your country, number one. And number two, I don't want to release this gang member out of my prison and put him in my country that I have turned from one of the most violent countries and the murder capital of the world. I'm not going to allow him to go out and kill my people, which is a real commentary on this. Look, this is very simple. 2 courts have ruled that this guy is an MS-13 gang member. He has been deported as a result of a hearing and an appeal by an immigration court. He came here not as a member of, not through any asylum claim. He didn't come through a port of entry. He was a got-away. He didn't come in as a protected status person. He is a got-away who decided to come into this country. He's been here for 11 years. There is a reliable document that he's a member of MS-13, but even that doesn't matter anymore because there are 2 courts, immigration courts, that ordered him deported. He did not make any kind of case that allowed them to decide that he shouldn't be deported. Now, let's take that to where we are now. In addition to the fact that he's illegal, he's from El Salvador, he's in El Salvador now. No local district court judge has the right to say to the United States, you better go over there. What are we going to do? Send SEAL Team 6 over to the prison in El Salvador and bring this guy back? He doesn't belong here. He's illegal. He came here illegally. Immigration court said, get your tail out of this country. And now the Democrats are freaking out. This guy, Van Halen, this senator, he should be ashamed of himself. If you want to go over there and you want to check on an illegal who is in this country illegally and is a member of MS-13, and you don't want to talk about Rachel Morin, who is from your state.
He did.
This is an example.
Today.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Today he figured out he should
he didn't.
have. Let me finish. Okay? This is the problem. We've got people who belong in Congress, who've been elected to Congress, who are worried about illegal criminals and not worried about American citizens like Joe Biden. And that's the reason we're in this mess in the first place. Start caring about American citizens.
Jessica Tarlov.
Hi.
Hi.
So, Senator, now I'm going to say Van Halen because you did.
I did.
Which
Sorry.
makes him a little bit cooler.
Yeah.
But did speak about Rachel Morin and has since she was murdered. That first and foremost, Abrego Garcia. There is no proof that he was an MS-13 member, and it has been debunked many times.
It's been debunked
yes, it
by
has.
liberal
It was
newspapers.
That's not true.
Court of law, a section I-113 or 123 is reliable, verifiable proof that you were a member of a gang, and he was never able to rebut it.
It was based on double hearsay testimony and also a detective who was indicted merely weeks later for providing confidential information to a sex worker. He was also allegedly an alcoholic. That's how we got into this. But the point is that this man has been living in this country out in public, meeting on an annual basis with his DHS caseworker. He goes in once a year. He talks to them. They know where he works. He's an on-the-books worker. This is not somebody who is a gangbanger. This is not somebody who has committed any other crime besides being here in this country. And he came here also based on credible threat of being murdered by a gang at home who was threatening his entire family. The reason that Democrats are talking about the fact that anyone could, quote unquote, be disappeared is that you can see a full-blown constitutional crisis playing out in front of our eyes. The Supreme Court ruled 9-0 that he had to be returned. President Bukhari is lying when he says that he can't get him back. We know that he can return people because he returned people from the original shipment. There were women that were sent there, and he said, oh, no, you shouldn't be here. And there were some Venezuelans that he didn't want. He said, okay, you shouldn't be here, and he shipped them on back. They think that it's funny. Getting that hot mic moment where Donald Trump and the El Salvadorian president are talking, they're kind of loitering around at the front of the Oval Office, where they're joking about, like, oh, wouldn't it be great if you could take our homegrown ones? You cannot legally send Americans to an El Salvadorian prison camp, no matter what they have done. Senator Kennedy was on our air earlier this afternoon with Sandra and John and said as much.
Okay.
You look at, one more thing to say. actually multiple more things to say. But what is most important is that under the Alien Enemies Act, you deserve due process. And that's what the Supreme Court ruled. And if you go back to World War II, when we were invoking this same act, that people who were here undocumented from Japan, from Germany, from Italy, were allowed to go into a court where they could argue that they weren't a danger to this nation. Abrego Garcia was not afforded that right to come into court and to argue as to why he should not be deported. And it is not the same thing to deport someone to their home country as to send them to a prison.
Well, then,
you know that.
First of all, the 9-0 decision by the Supreme Court held that the judge was wrong to think that she or he could enjoin the whole nation and dictate to a president international policy.
Facilitate his return.
No. The facilitation, as the Attorney General herself said, was that if they decide to return him, no judge can tell the president you have to go into another country and pull a citizen of that country and bring him back here when he's illegal here in the first place.
All right. Greg, is this a constitutional crisis?
You know what's funny? I don't care. I honestly don't care. Do you not? I bet the viewers at home feel this narrative at work. What is strange about this story? What is the strange thing about this story? The majority of Americans favor deportation of illegals, especially those who are criminals, but they favor deportation of illegal. The last, 8 days, 7 days, has been around about one person.
Yep.
One person. I don't even know his name. I don't care. I don't care. If he's here illegal, he's got to go. We are not responsible for the faulty process that allowed him to be here before. Is he a terrorist? Is he not a terrorist? I don't care. Let me give you an analogy. This will be good for you because you like sports. You walk down to your box seats. There's somebody sitting in your seat. And you go, why is this guy sitting in my seat? And they go, well, he's not supposed to be there. But you know, he's a family man. He's got a job. It's like, yeah, but that's not on me. That's my seat. Don't you have a process for having him leave that seat? Yes, we do. Can he go back to his seat? Why doesn't he go back to his seat? It's not my concern where that seat is. He's got to go. Yes, but did you know he's been trying really hard to be a good citizen? He's really quiet. He's not making. No, you don't understand. He's got to go. Now, we knew that this process wouldn't be easy. Yeah. It was really easy for Democrats to open the floodgates and be seen as the heroes. Look how compassionate we are. It's always going to be harder to send them back. And you're going to be treated like a villain every single step of the way because adults fix the problems that children's cause. And sometimes the adults have to do big stuff to fix the big problems that were caused by Democrats who, in this case, are the children. As for this, why are they talking about this disappear fear? It's because the bat signal went up. Last week it was chaos. Now it's disappear fear. You put it on the mountain of imaginary concerns, along with paper straws, the climate apocalypse, Russian collusion, white supremacy, Musk is a Nazi. This is what I mean when you can feel the narrative. You can feel it. You go like, oh, now I understand this. This whole thing, this guy is nothing more than a tool that is being used to subvert the needs and concerns of the American public. This is why they're latching onto it. You mentioned how the deportation, in a way, has the same issues as the invasion. It's a mirror. Biden opened the border, millions came in, and surely murderers and rapists were part of that. Now we're deporting hundreds of thousands, and surely one or two might not be criminal. However, compare the error. In one of these errors, Americans don't die. At worst, a guy gets sent to a country he doesn't want to go to. You know what? I can live with that.
Into a prison camp, not just out into the wild.
Look, I'm sorry, Jessica. I understand your concern, but I refuse to care about one person who's an illegal alien when the mental shelf space that I have is now reserved for victims of crime, which I've been talking about for years. This manufactured narrative, family man, father of three, coming from the media who with the same intensity talked about having children was bad for the climate, are now telling us that when you have children, you are now a pillar of the community. If that guy was a white American citizen, they would just call him a MAGA extremist. But he's an illegal alien and he has kids, and now he's the spirit of the community. He's a good guy.
Yeah, but in addition to that, there are 2 courts that ruled he had his due process.
Yeah.
No one, I don't care about any of that.
60 Minutes found that 75% of the people who have been sent to that prison do not have a criminal record here. Have not. Yes,
60 Minutes went over and interviewed them?
Yeah, actually they did, and they actually spoke to the lawyers involved in these cases.
60 Minutes said the laptop
Talk to any defense attorney.
Meantime, the Trump administration considers expanding its deportation efforts to U.S. citizens convicted of crimes. The president talking about that. This comes as the president's team fights federal judges over how much authority it has to send illegal immigrants packing. Senior White House correspondent Peter Doocy joins us live from the North Lawn with the latest. Good evening, Peter.
Good evening, Brett. We're told that just a few minutes ago, President Trump signed an executive order that builds on something President Biden tried to do, which is improve the Medicare drug pricing negotiation program. But a lot of the talk all day before that was about immigration.
Number one, at ease. Just enjoy yourself. You can take it. I'm the boss here.
The White House counsel's office is helping President Trump look for legal footing to deport American-born criminals in the name of public safety.
Could we use it for violent criminals, our own violent criminals?
I call them homegrown criminals.
Yes.
I mean, the homegrowns.
The
ones that grew up and something went wrong.
The press secretary insists this would only be used narrowly.
He would only consider this, if legal, for Americans who are the most violent, egregious, repeat offenders of crime who nobody in this room wants living in their communities.
The Trump administration is also frustrated with Boston-based federal judge Indira Talwani, who is blocking President Trump from pulling legal status and work permits for more than 500,000 migrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. DHS spokeswoman Tricia McLaughlin says Biden's reckless parole programs unleashed over 530,000 poorly vetted aliens into America, fueling crime and stealing jobs, forcing our agents in the field to ignore rampant fraud. Are you guys going to give all 530,000 plus people individual deportation hearings, or are you just going to try to deport them?
I spoke to White House counsel's office about this. We will continue to focus on deporting as many individuals as we can.
And at some point today, the plan was for President Trump to sign a different presidential memorandum as well that would prevent illegal immigrants from obtaining Social Security benefits, and then instruct the Social Security Administration to figure out how to claw some of that money back from fraudsters. Brett?
Peter Doocy live on the North Lawn. Peter, thanks. You can see President Trump's interview on Fox Noticias right now. Go to noticias.foxnews.com.
Let's bring in on that Republican Louisiana Senator John Kennedy. He serves on several committees, including the Judiciary Committee. Sir, thank you so much for joining us. I want to immediately get your thoughts on this, as we've got this brand new sound from President Trump, who is sitting down with Rachel Campos Duffy at 4 o'clock Eastern time on the Fox Spanish channel. And he said this on that. Listen.
Could we use it for violent criminals, our own violent criminals?
I call them homegrown criminals.
Yes.
I mean, the homegrowns.
The
ones that grew up and something went wrong and they hit people over the head with a baseball bat. We have, and push people into subways just before the train gets there, like you see happening sometimes. We are looking into it and we want to do it. I would love to do that.
Well, Senator Kennedy, you are a smart legal mind. Do you have any problem with that?
No, none. I think the president's right. If you're in our country illegally, you're a criminal. Illegal immigration is illegal, duh. And I think there are plenty of laws, which President Biden ignored, that allow us to deport you. I mean, to me, it's just straightforward. And people who oppose that approach, it seems to me, are not being intellectually honest. They just ought to go ahead and admit they support open borders.
Senator, I want to get your reaction to this federal judge in Boston, her ruling on this controversial mass parole program here. Call for number 2. These are the numbers. So more than 500,000 migrants from these 4 countries were flown into the U.S. under President Biden. He essentially used his executive authority, waved the magic wand, and allowed all these people to come into the country. Now, President Trump comes into office. He tries to use that exact same executive authority to take their parole grants away, and a judge is saying no. Your thoughts?
Well, the judge is wrong. He or she obviously doesn't know a law book from a J. Crew catalog. I believe this judge issued a national injunction. In my judgment, those are illegal. A national injunction is when 2 parties go to court, plaintiff and defendant, and the federal judge issues a ruling, but it doesn't just apply to those 2 parties in court. It applies to the whole country. Now, there's no basis in statutory law for that. There's no basis in Supreme Court precedent for that. There's no basis in English common law for that, on which our justice system is based. The Supreme Court could fix it, and I hope it does quickly. We have a bill in Congress proposed in the Senate by Senator Grassley to make it very clear that national injunctions are an abuse of authority. It's a fairly new phenomenon. Federal judges didn't do this for most of the 20th century. There were only 27 national injunctions, but it started under in the 21st century. 67% of the national injunctions that have been issued against President Trump, and none of the judges have explained why all of a sudden they got up one morning and ate their judge's breakfast and went to the courthouse and started using national injunctions on which there's no basis, with respect to which there's no basis on Article 3 of the Constitution.
Okay, so Senator, could I circle back there to what we heard from the president? And I heard you say if they're here illegally. I think the point that he's being challenged on and is likely to come up in the White House press briefing room there is whether or not you agree with the president's suggestion of sending U.S.-born, U.S. citizens accused and who have committed crimes to notorious prisons like the one in El Salvador.
You mean sending them to foreign countries?
Yes.
No, I don't agree with that.
Okay. All right, so let's move on to another big topic that's going to come up with the White House press briefing room, and that is going to be China. And the heat is definitely turning up on tariffs. This is the Treasury Secretary, Senator, on working to get the first trade deal through. This was a Bloomberg podcast yesterday. Listen.
I think there will be advantage to our allies, especially, and a first mover advantage. Usually the first person who makes the deal gets the best deal. So
who do you think will be first?
It's their choice.
So your thoughts on where this goes next and how important it is to get that deal through?
It's undeniable that many foreign countries have used trade barriers, tariffs, to take advantage of the American people and cost us jobs. President Trump has called their hand. He has raised our tariffs and said, I want reciprocal tariffs. If you raise yours, I'll raise mine. But if you, foreign country, will lower yours, I will lower ours. It's called a reciprocal tariff, and I agree with it. It's also undeniable, in my opinion, that none of these foreign countries would be coming to the table but for what President Trump did. Now, the narrative among some members of the legacy media is that President Trump has, how can I put it, he's gone disco and he doesn't really have a rationale or a plan because he's not talking about it. I don't have any inside knowledge, but I believe that he's not talking about it because he's in the middle of negotiations. The worst actor is China. We, with our help, China was admitted to the WTO, the World Trade Organization, on December 11th, 2001. China started cheating December the 12th. And we need, figuratively speaking, we need to call their hand and slap them to Pluto until they start abiding by fair trading rules. It won't be easy, but China will ultimately have no choice. China's economy is on a journey to the center of the earth. They buy 5 times more stuff, we buy 5 times more stuff from them than they sell to us, and they're an export economy, so they're going to have to come to the table at some point.
All right, Senator, we always appreciate your time there, sir. Thank you so much for joining us.
These remarks, by the way, we'll have a panel discussion about more of the comments a little bit later in the show. The remarks come amid continuing questions about President Biden's mental capacity while he was serving in the Oval Office and reports of myriad problems in ultimately the unsuccessful campaign of Kamala Harris. Senior national correspondent Aisha Hasni has the story for us tonight. Good evening, Aisha.
Hey, good evening to you, Brett. We're watching these remarks very closely to see what exactly the former president says. He has not mentioned President Trump's name just yet, but he's been talking a lot about Elon Musk. And he's trying to really just get back into the mix here, Brett, by doing these stump-type speeches here. He's wanting to get back into the swing of things by campaigning for Democrats. And the question really is, does the party want him back? So a source who worked closely with the Biden campaign tells Politico this: it takes a special level of chutzpah as the man most responsible for re-electing Donald Trump to decide it's your voice that is missing in this moment. The country would be better served if he rode off into the sunset. That is a burn. But today, the top House Democrat threw Biden a bone.
Unprecedented assault on Social Security is an all hands on deck moment, which is why President Biden's voice in this fight is going to be so incredibly important.
Now, this all comes as bombshell new books about Biden reveal efforts to cover up his decline, including this one. In this book, Uncharted, author Chris Whipple writes that at a 2024 Medal of Freedom ceremony, the one you're watching right there, Nancy Pelosi was, quote, startled by how much the president had aged. But she still publicly defended him against a Wall Street Journal report about his mental sharpness. Then, after that disastrous June debate, she basically abandoned him. Here's Pelosi today about where things stand now.
I love him. I respect him. I respect his family and all the rest. But it was at a point where we had to win the election.
The Trump White House reacting to Biden stepping back into the spotlight today.
I'm shocked that he is speaking at nighttime. I thought his bedtime was much earlier than his speech tonight. President Trump is absolutely certain about protecting Social Security benefits for law-abiding, tax-paying American citizens and seniors who have paid into this program. He will always protect that program.
And we will see if President Trump has a response as well to the former president's speech. Just to mention really quickly, Brett, the former president, has been joking a little bit about his own age.
All right, Aisha, thank you. Again, more with the panel in just a bit.
ICE Denver arrested a 36-year-old citizen of Mexico who is registered as a sex offender and has been convicted of sexual assault of a child in Lake County, Colorado. ICE Baltimore arrested a 50-year-old citizen of China convicted of sex trafficking in Bel Air, Maryland. And ICE Boston arrested a 46-year-old citizen of Jamaica convicted of 3 counts of rape of a child and 2 counts of indecent assault and battery of a child under 14 in Boston, Massachusetts.
That was White House Press Secretary Leavitt laying out the arrests of some of these illegal aliens being deported by ICE. All of it coming as President Trump is now authorizing the Department of Defense to control some federal land along the border stretching across 3 states. And the new plan seems to be working, with March encounters at the southern border down 95% from March of last year. Let's bring in White House border czar Tom Homan. Tom, thank you so much for being here. It appears all of your efforts are working here. Now, why is it that you've been able to secure the border in this way and the previous administration was not?
Because I work for the greatest president in my lifetime, Donald Trump. He proves it every day. He proves every day that he's the greatest president in the history of this nation, because he took the effort. Day one, he knew what he had to do, because he did it during Trump 45, putting out executive orders, remain in Mexico, the third safe country agreements, end, catch, and release. And plus, he's got this out of the box thinking, as he always does, bringing the whole of government to securing the border, including DOD. Right now, today, as I'm talking to you, we have the safest, most secure border in the history of this nation, because of President Trump and the men and women of the Border Patrol, who are doing a great job, men and women of ICE doing a great job every day. Most secure border in history right now because of these efforts.
Tom, we know how you feel about sanctuary jurisdictions. We talk about it all the time. A pretty egregious case just came out today out of Maryland. If we can pull the guy's photo up right now, call for number 7. ICE in Baltimore announced that a Guatemalan illegal alien who has been deported 2 times from the country already is facing charges in Prince George's County, Maryland. That's a sanctuary county, facing charges for murder. And Prince George's County released him into the community and ignored ICE's detainer. ICE is blasting the county in a statement, saying that they're putting the community at risk. Just give us your reaction to hearing that this sanctuary Maryland county released a guy 2 times deported who is facing murder charges locally there.
It's disgusting. People want to know why I get so upset and emotional on news networks or testifying in front of Congress, because of what these sanctuary cities are doing. Sanctuary cities, sanctuary states are sanctuaries for criminals. You just talked about public safety threats arrested in Boston. Remember, the Boston mayor testified that Tom Holm was lying. We don't have a problem there. I said I was going to bring hell to Boston. Of course, the left hated that, but when I meant that, we're going to go to Boston, bring hell to illegal aliens that rape children. So now we got to go to Baltimore. I'll get together with Secretary Noem. We're going to increase resources in Boston. We got 2 Venezuelans just tortured a woman, left her for dead, torturing her with an electric drill in Washington State. So look, sanctuary cities, we're just going to increase resources there. Why? Because they're releasing public safety threats, significant public safety threats back in the community. President Trump made a commitment. We're going to concentrate on the significant public safety threats and national security threats. We know where they are because they're getting released by sanctuary cities every day. That is why we're going to increase resources in these areas. We're going to bring a lot of attention to these areas because that's where the danger is. We're going to keep President Trump's promise to America. We're going to make this country safe again, and we're going to target every foreign national public safety threat in this country. We won't rest till every single one are eradicated from this country.
Tom, Caroline Leavitt at the White House just a moment ago was asked about this person who was sent away to that prison mistakenly. She said the media coverage of it is despicable and described it like this.
The Democrat and media outrage over the deportation of Abrego Garcia, an MS-13 El Salvadorian illegal alien criminal who is hiding in Maryland, has been nothing short of despicable. Based on the sensationalism of many of the people in this room, you would think we deported a candidate for Father of the Year. That's because, unfortunately, many in this country care more about this quote-unquote Maryland father, a legal alien MS-13 gang member, than a Maryland mother and an American citizen who was brutally murdered at the hands of a different illegal alien. Of course, I am referring to Rachel Morin.
Tom, how do you respond to these Democratic lawmakers, including Van Hollen, who say they're going to now ask for a meeting with the president there in El Salvador? They're going to travel there and demand his release.
Well, good luck with that. Carolyn Levin is exactly right. Every time I read a story about this, it's Maryland father, Maryland father. They don't mention he's a member of MS-13, who is a designated terrorist group, one of the most violent gangs in the world. They don't mention he's an MS-13 member. They don't mention he's an El Salvadoran citizen being held by the country of El Salvador. El Salvador makes that decision. Now the courts said we got to facilitate. We'll facilitate, but El Salvador has full authority on this. Again, a terrorist threat. Now if somehow he comes back and that happens, he's going to be detained and removed again. He's an MS-13 gang member based on our intelligence and El Salvador's intelligence. He will be detained and he will be deported. But what's the sense of bringing someone back that's simply going to face deportation again? He's a public safety threat. He's a gang member, and he's a designated terrorist. We should not be bringing any of those people back to the United States. That's my opinion.
All right, Tom, thank you very much for joining us on all the breaking news.
An Obama-appointed judge yesterday blocked another immigration policy from the Trump administration. They revoked the Trump administration the legal status of and work permits of more than 530,000 migrants brought into the U.S. under the controversial Biden administration program. Now, that policy, the Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela mass humanitarian parole program, gave nationals from those countries a path to legal status in the United States. The judge ruling instead that each migrant is entitled to a case-by-case review, a decision that won't be on hold while the administration appeals it. My next guest says that ruling turns the whole parole process on its head. Former acting DHS Deputy Secretary Ken Cuccinelli joins me now. Ken, good afternoon to you. I can only assume that by your estimation, this entire policy has been turned on its head. It's that this was a mass humanitarian migration, and now, in order to deport, you have to go case by case. Mass on entry, case by case when leaving.
So, yes, and people need to understand the use of the word parole in immigration. Parole isn't like prison. It's permission for one person to come into the country based on their own individual reasons. And instead, the Biden administration set up the CHNV program as a mass parole. That is an oxymoron, Will. There's no such thing as mass parole. So here you have the Trump administration trying to undo that. And the judge says, oh, no, now to undo what was supposed to be case by case in the first place, but wasn't, you have to undo it on a case-by-case basis. I recall listening to Stephen Miller on the White House grounds giving an interview where he said, look, if we have to go through a case for every single one of these 10 million people that Joe Biden let in here, it'll take decades to undo it all. That's outrageous. And you have a judge here really interfering with executive prerogative of the president and, like I said, turning the whole parole system completely on its head.
The story, in part, Ken, is about a judge once again interfering with the executive's implementation of immigration policy. But the story is also, as you point out, the Biden administration. These numbers are pretty staggering, actually. This program, which was put in place in early 2023, so it's 2 years old, brought in 530,000 people. Here are the numbers, by the way. 211,000 came from Haiti. 117,000 came from Venezuela. They were mass importing immigrants into this country under this program.
Yes, absolutely. That was the point. And again, mass parole is an oxymoron. Congress set up the parole statute, and it actually says in the law, case by case. And yet we saw Obama do this with things like DACA and DAPA, very similar, with using their prosecutorial discretion. And now we see the Biden administration using parole to establish entire programs without congressional permission and to let in illegal aliens, because that's what they are. Parole is used to make an exception to your ability to be here legally. And they did it en masse. This was a big program the last 2 years, but it wasn't the only program under Joe Biden.
No, that's a good point. It wasn't the only one, but it is one that we should make this point as well, Ken. One would be tempted to think, well, this is a humanitarian effort. These countries were targeted because we wanted to extend an invitation for those that were being persecuted in their home countries. But it was paused last summer because of widespread fraud. This entire humanitarian program was paused because there were 3,200 serial sponsors. So here in the United States, serial sponsors helping these people come in. That doesn't sound like a humanitarian mission.
No, not at all. And the fraud was epic. I mean, the instances of it, for instance, over 1,000 people filing for this parole from the same IP address in Tijuana, Mexico. Hundreds of sponsors listed at the same address. And this was repeated over and over across the United States, including like storage units. These aren't even people's residences or even offices. And this amounts, Will, to tens of thousands of examples of fraud that the Biden administration itself uncovered. That's to say nothing of how this mixes in with, for instance, the distribution of Social Security numbers that DOJ has uncovered as well. Right. So when this judge tries to insulate these folks from having the parole revoked by suddenly treating it like a long-established congressional immigration program, instead of an exercise of executive authority using parole, they turn the system on its head. And who's always on the bottom? It's always Donald Trump across the whole use of these nationwide injunctions. And technically, this was an injunction. It was done as a class action case, which completely violates Rule 23, which is the federal rule that addresses class actions. Just on the point you made, if you've got these tens of thousands of instances of fraud, you cannot be like everyone else in the class. That's not a legitimate class. The judge is trying to insulate his ruling from appeal.
So now we have 530,000 migrants imported into this country over a 2-year period through a program that was filled with fraud, and now they have to be reviewed on a case-by-case basis or they remain in America. Ken Cuccinelli, thank you so much for being with us.
Good to be with you, Will.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.